Hello there everybody, this is FourFourTwo and my name is Adam Cleary, tactics enthusiast, personality hire, let's face it, and founding member of the Worried About Brighton Club. They had like no wins in 8 games or something, pundits were smugly saying bubbles may have burst, alarm bells for me, and I assume Brighton fans, were starting to ring. Quite gently perhaps, but they were ringing. But not to worry too much though, because they just bent Ajax over 2 games in a row and smashed them, which was very pleasing to see, because they did it doing quintessentially Brighton things. Those Dutch boys learned this season, as many did in the Premier League last season, that if you don't give Brighton the respect they are due, if you try and take them on at the game they want you to play, they will just tear you to bits. And we covered this extensively on the channel last season. Brighton love to have this sort of 7-player build-out shape that's all designed to get 1 or 2 killer passes either bounced off a midfielder or into the wide players, something like that. They've not really been able to do this in the Premier League as easily as they would like to this season, but Ajax seemingly just didn't care. And that second goal was about as quintessentially perfect a Roberto De Zerbi Brighton goal as you could ever possibly see. It starts in Brighton's own half, they're knocking it about, they're inviting the opposition, they are daring them to try and press them high, and when they do, they get a really quick bounce pass out of centre midfield that opens up the entire final third, by which point they've got men over, they have got options, they have got space, and when they get into that space, they kill them dead. Just look at this, in one quick bounce pass from Matoma, Brighton go from this situation in their own half to this situation in the opposition half, and because they've successfully lured so many Ajax players up the pitch, they end up with a man over in the final third. Adingra comes in on the right hand side, look at all the space he's got here, and he makes it 2-0. What a game, what a result, what a performance. It's so nice to see, because we haven't seen an awful lot of it. In fact, since they beat Bournemouth back in September, the 2 Ajax results are the only 2 wins they've managed to get. They got absolutely stuffed off Aston Villa. They played well against Liverpool but couldn't get the win. They drew with Fulham. They drew with Everton. You can see why there was a little bit of concern about what was going on. And it isn't a case that Brighton have been found out. It's just that for every single system that exists, there are ways to try and mitigate that, to play against it, to reduce its impactfulness, and more teams are finding success doing the obvious things to try and stop Brighton. Like as we said before, their build-up is very effective because what they do is they push all 4 of their attackers really high up. You're too far to reach. Over there, we'll imagine the defence here, and that creates loads of space in this part of the pitch for them to build out from the back. And because they'll spend a lot of time keeping the ball in an area the opposition would simply love to win it back in, eventually the temptation forces them to press really high, to try and go man for man, to try and force a really good turnover, and eventually some Brighton player will get free of a marker, someone else will show short, play one really quick pass into them, and they are away. So why have we started to see that working less and less this season? Well, ladies and gentlemen, may I introduce to you Shawn D. You see, last season, in what remains the biggest f*** me, how did that happen result of the entire campaign, Everton, who looked like they were dead certs to get relegated, beat Brighton 5-1, who looked like they were dead certs for European football. And the way he did that was by looking at Brighton's system of, well, come on then, come and press us, come and leave a load of space, and then just going, and this is my best Shawn D impression, you ready? No. And instead, what he did, you'll have to imagine, this is Everton now and not Brighton, was just go to 2 incredibly disciplined banks of 4. In fact, this isn't even accurate because they were far narrower than this. They denied Brighton all the space possible in their own half and made no attempt whatsoever to press them in their half. This, and I'm going to have to make it even deeper because it was nowhere near the halfway line, is what is known as a low block. It is very structured, it is very disciplined, it stops the teams that are really good at playing through you from playing through you, and instead forces them out wide into the flanks, where their last resort tends to be to put a cross into the box, but of course that's fine because you've got loads of players in that area and you tend to have bigger, stronger footballers who are just going to head that away. It plays into your hands, not theirs. Now of course, quick caveat here, this is just a system, which means it's just an idea. Loads of teams have this idea against Brighton, but what matters is the execution of it. If you want a single manager in world football to execute this well, it's Shawn D, a man who loves 2 banks of 4 so much, I'm astonished he doesn't have 8 children. You can just see that, can't you? Shawn D coming downstairs on Christmas morning, all 8 of his kids neatly arranged in 2 rows of 4, matching pajamas, all of that. Single tear rolling down his cheek with pride as his wife hands him a packet of Strepsils to unwrap. It's a beautiful sight. Anyway, yeah, so the key to the execution of this is obviously staying disciplined, staying in your shape, but more importantly, moving together as a unit. Because you can already see from this, there is a little bit of space down the flanks, and yes, you are hoping the team will go out there rather than trying to play through the middle, but you can't just be letting them have that. You can't just let them have unlimited crosses into the box. When the play does come out to this side, the whole team has to shuffle over as a unit to deny the space there as well. They have to do that together. And this has been Brighton's problem, because Dice showed it worked last season, he showed it worked again this season. So other teams now, they just don't even really try to find a counter to Brighton's system. They just think, well, we'll sit as deep and as compact and as tight as we can, stop them playing through us. We'll not get invited up the other end of the pitch to leave loads of room for them to exploit. We'll just do this, and then we'll try and hit them with a really purposeful counter-attack. Again, Everton 5-1 last season, they hit them with like 5 counter-attacks. And this inability to play through this stuff is reflected in the numbers as well, because last season Brighton were 4th in the league behind only Man City, Arsenal, and Liverpool for the number of successful passes they were able to make into the final third of the pitch. The amount of times they were able to get somebody on the ball in this area. You compare that to this season's numbers, they've dropped to 8th in the division for that exact same statistic. Which is obviously not a huge drop off, I'll grant you, but you go from being one of the best in the league to just kind of average at it. That shows they're struggling to enact their own game plan. And as well, in their other favourite route to goal, their high turnovers, you can see the tide starting to turn there as well. Because the thing is, while bizarrely they do still lead the league in the number of shots they've gotten from a high turnover, showing that they are really, really good at turning those into chances, they're actually 11th in the league for the number of total high turnovers. Now, if that sounds a little bit confusing, that's because it is, but think about it this way. Like I said, they are really good at turning high turnovers into chances. That's why they're top of that particular stat, but teams are giving them far fewer chances to actually do that. They're far more cautious on the ball when Brighton are trying to press, because they know they're going to do that. But just back to the real problem, which is their inability to break down a low block like this. How do you do it? Because loads of teams get low blocked against. Man City face a low block every single game. Liverpool face a low block every single game. And Brighton proved last season they're just as good at creating chances and scoring goals as those two teams. So how do they solve that problem? Well, the solution, and this is a trick Brighton are yet to master, is in the switch of play. Now, you, of course, like me, remember the old switch of play from when you used to play ball as a kid, and you'd always have some bellend standing on the other wing shouting, switch it, every time you got the ball because they just wanted it. But that is quite literally the most effective way to break down a low block, because they're not going to come out, they're not going to leave any space behind, so you have to find some space to play in. And as you can see here, you can do that. This is literally a Pep Guardiola thing. Like, Manchester City and Liverpool were the undisputed masters of the switch of play last season. The two teams that probably faced low blocks more than anybody else. They led the league in terms of the number of total passes that travelled 40 or more yards across the width of the pitch. And the reason you do that is because for how disciplined this system is, it still can only cover so much of the pitch. You've only got so many men. So if you overload massively one side and really force them over here to try and stop you playing, it creates loads of space on the other side. And all you have to do is find a way, once you're in this situation, to get the ball as quickly as possible to the opposite flank to find players in that space. Now, it's not easy. Obviously, it's one of the hardest passes to play in football, and as soon as you do, they're going to start shuffling back over the other side to stop that space, but it is going to take them time, and you can wind up, as Brighton literally did in the Everton game, with a very rare one-on-one situation. And Brighton, understandably, given the way they like to play, are very reluctant to play that kind of pass. They rank 15th in the league this season, right near the bottom, for the total number of switches of play. But the thing is, when they do them, they're incredibly effective. It's how they got their equaliser against Everton. You can see here they've got the ball on the right-hand side. Everton have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 players in that half of the pitch. They're moving it around, and then all of a sudden, someone gets their head up and finds Matoma on the opposite flank. And that, if you watch that game, is pretty much the most space any Brighton player found himself in the entire 90 minutes. And of course, the goal itself's incredibly spawny. It comes off Young's leg and it flips over Pickford's head, but it comes about because Matoma finally got himself in a bit of space. He finally isolated a defender. He went one-on-one with him, and when that happens, things can just happen. And things happen. So bottom line here, Brighton are still really, really good, but teams now have a way of playing which does make life far more difficult for them, and if they want to counteract that, they need to become a long ball team. Granted, not front to back, we're talking side to side here, but it's still a very long ball. So you could sort of make the argument that over 2 games and 2 seasons, Shawn D has sort of forced Brighton to go Route 1. Well, not Route 1, like Route A, or whatever you're going to call that. But it's interesting, isn't it? Anyway, just a quick one, because it is Friday and I do really want to go to the pub. If you're a Brighton fan, or even if you're not, let us know what you think of that in the comments. Have you found that this season? Do you find teams are giving you far more just sort of defensive sort of compactness to deal with? Do you think Zerbi's going to have solutions for that? Do you think maybe the fact you've lost a couple of players is starting to tell? You remember them? Yeah, loads of money. That did actually happen. All opinions welcome in the comments below. And while I've got you, I know I always say this, but please do consider subscribing to FourFourTwo here on YouTube. We do videos like this all the time, and as you can see, it's not even for the conventional, massive, air quotes, big clubs. Every single team in the Premier League and the Championship and abroad is very interesting to us. When we have opportunities to talk about them, we always try to do so, but we can only do that if we do them and it gets us subscribers, because then it shows there is an audience, and that's just how we work these things out. So if you have enjoyed this, please do subscribe, I think was my point. Get me on Twitter, X, Instagram, whatever the hell you like, at Adam Cleary, CLERY, the 442 socials. They are always available to you every single minute of the video. And until next time, that's Brighton, who I hope have turned a corner now. Ooh, that went in. And I'll see you soon. Goodbye. That never happens. That never happens. Bye.